unless immediately made use of, it sinks, and rises again no more. Careful people, of course, who know this peculiarity, are on the watch, being aware of the ill consequences of heavy bread, or having no bread but bannocks in the house. As near as I can recollect, the salt rising is made as follows: for a small baking of 2 or 3 loaves, or 1 large bake kettle loaf, about the size of a London peck loaf, take about a pint of moderately warm water, a pleasant heat to the hand, and stir into the jug or pot containing it as much flour as will make a good batter, not too thick; add to this half a tea spoonful of salt, not more, and set the vessel in a pan of moderately warm water, within a little distance of the fire, or in the sun. The water that surrounds the pot in which your rising is must never be allowed to cool much below the original heat, more warm water being added (in the pan, not to the barm) till the whole is in an active state of fermentation, which will be from 6 to 8 hours, when the dough must be mixed with it, and as much warm water or milk as you require. Knead the mass till it is tough, and does not stick to the board. Make up your loaf or loaves, and keep them warmly covered near the fire till they rise. They must be baked directly this second rising takes place. Those that bake what I term a shanty loaf in an iron bake pot or kettle, placed on the hot embers, set the dough to rise over a very few embers, or near the hot hearth, keeping the pot or pan turned as the loaf rises. When equally risen all over, they put hot ashes beneath and upon the lid, taking care not to let the heat be too fierce at first. As this is the most common method of baking, and the first that the settler sees practised, it is as well they should be made familiar with it beforehand. At first I was inclined to grumble and rebel against the expediency of bake pans or bake kettles; but as cooking stoves, iron ovens, and even brick and clay built ovens, will not start up at your bidding in the bush, these substitutes are valuable, and perform a number of uses. I have eaten excellent light bread baked on the emigrant's hearth in one of these kettles. I have eaten boiled potatoes, baked meats, excellent stews, and good soups, all cooked at different times in this universally useful utensil, so let it not be despised. It is one of those things peculiarly adapted to the circumstances of settlers in the bush before they have collected those comforts about their homesteads, within and without, that are the reward and the slow gleaning up of many years of toil. There are several other sorts of rising similar to the salt rising: milk rising, which is mixed with milk, warm from the cow, and about a third warm water; and bran rising, which is made with bran instead of flour, and is preferred by many persons to either of the former kinds. Soft soap. Of the making of soft soap I can give little or no correct information, never having been given any certain rule myself, and my own experience is too limited. I was, however, given a hint from a professional gentleman, which I mean to act upon forthwith. Instead of boiling the soap, which is some trouble, he assured me the best plan was to run off the lye from a barrel of ashes. Into this lye I might put 4 or 5 pounds of any sort of grease, such as pot skimmings, rinds of bacon, or scraps from frying down suet. In short, any refuse of the kind would do. The barrel with its contents may then be placed in a secure situation in the garden or yard, exposed to the sun and air. In course of time the lye and grease become incorporated. If the grease predominates, it will be seen floating on the surface. In such a case add more lye. If the mixture does not thicken, add more grease. Now this is the simplest, easiest, and clearest account I have yet received on the subject of soap making, which hitherto has seemed a mystery, even though a good quantity was made last spring by one of my servants, and it turned out well; but she could not tell why it succeeded, for want of being able to explain the principle she worked from. Candles. Every one makes their own candles, that is, if they have any materials to make them from. The great difficulty of making candles, and as far as I see the only one, is procuring the tallow, which a bush settler, until he begins to kill his own beef, sheep, and hogs, is rarely able to do, unless he buys, and a settler buys nothing that he can help. A cow, however, that is unprofitable, old, or unlikely to survive the severity of the coming winter, is often suffered to go dry during the summer, and get her own living, till she is fit to kill in the fall. Such an animal is often slaughtered very advantageously, especially if the settler have little fodder for his cattle. The beef is often excellent, and good store of candles and soap may be made from the inside fat. These candles, if made 3 parts beef and 1 part hog's lard, will burn better than any store candles, and cost less than half price. The tallow is merely melted in a pot or pan convenient for the purpose, and having run the cotton wicks into the moulds, tin or pewter moulds for 6 candles cost 3s. at the stores, and last many, many years. A stick or skewer is passed through the loops of your wicks, at the upper part of the stand, which serves the purpose of drawing the candles. The melted fat, not too hot, but in a fluid state, is then poured into the moulds till they are full. As the fat gets cold it shrinks, and leaves a hollow at the top of the mould. This requires filling up when quite cold. If the candles do not draw readily, plunge the mould for an instant into hot water, and the candles will come out easily. Many persons prefer making dip candles for kitchen use, but for my own part I think the trouble quite as great, and give the preference, in point of neatness of look, to the moulds. It may be my maid and I did not succeed so well in making the dips as the moulds. Pickling. The great want of spring vegetables renders pickles a valuable addition to the table at the season when potatoes have become unfit and distasteful. If you have been fortunate in your maple vinegar, a store of pickled cucumbers, beans, cabbage, &c., may be made during the latter part of the summer; but if the vinegar should not be fit at that time, there are 2 expedients. One is to make a good brine of boiled salt and water, into which you throw your cucumbers, &c. The cabbage by and by may be preserved in the root house or cellar quite good, or buried in pits well covered, till you want to make your pickle. Those vegetables kept in brine must be covered close, and when you wish to pickle them, remove the top layer, which are not so good, and having boiled the vinegar with spices, let it stand till it is cold. The cucumbers should previously have been well washed, and soaked in 2 or 3 fresh waters, and drained; then put in a jar, and the cold vinegar poured over them. The advantage of this is obvious: you can pickle at any season. Another plan, and I have heard it much commended, is putting the cucumbers into a mixture of whiskey and water, which in time turns to a fine vinegar, and preserves the colour and crispness of the vegetable, while the vinegar is apt to make them soft, especially if poured on boiling hot, as is the usual practice. Note. In the Backwoodsman this whiskey receipt is mentioned as an abominable compound. Perhaps the witty author had tasted the pickles in an improper state of progression. He gives a lamentable picture of American cookery, but declares the badness arises from want of proper receipts. These yeast receipts will be extremely useful in England, as the want of fresh yeast is often severely felt in country districts. End of Appendix A. Appendix B omitted for this reading. End of The Backwoods of Canada, by Catherine Parr Traill.